have wills because they want to protect their families. But our first question is this: what is the basic difference between a will and a trust? Because some people who have wills probably should have a trust.
Well, here's the thing. When you have a will, basically that means that if something happens to you, unless you own something as a joint owner, like what we call joint tenancy, things like that, when you pass, Steve, somebody has to be appointed through the court system to fulfill the wishes of the will. That's called probate. On a living trust, that avoids the probate. It avoids it for many different reasons, but the biggest thing I want our viewers to understand is you don't have to be a wealthy person to do a living trust. There's this perception out there that you have to have a lot of money in order to do a trust.
Sure.
The trust is designed to avoid the court system after you pass.
All right, so people are watching right now, and they're thinking, okay, well, I would qualify. I'm not super rich. I'm not in the Trump category. Should I go ahead and change my will to a trust?
I think if you have a home and you have a little bit of money put away, you should always get a consultation from an estate planning attorney to determine if you should do a trust, if it's in your best interest. There's no reason really not to do one necessarily, but if somebody has a very small estate. But here's the thing. When you do a trust, we call what's called funding. Funding means, Steve, that you take your home, for example. It's in your name, Steve Ducey. You transfer it out of your name into the name of the trust. Why? Because now the trust owns it. You own the trust yourself. You could change it anytime you want. God forbid something happens to you, it doesn't have to go through the court because you've appointed people to fulfill your wishes, avoiding the need for probate.
Oh, that's interesting. So the title on the mortgage is not Steve Ducey. It would be a Ducey Family Trust or something like that.
On the title to the property.
All right. Final question. What is the most common myth about a trust? And you got 30 seconds.
Most people think if you have a living trust, it's an asset protection vehicle. In other words, it protects your assets. That in and of itself is not a true statement. There are types of trust that estate planning lawyers do that you could do to protect your assets, but a living trust, what we call revocable family living trust, in and of itself is not an asset protection vehicle. It's a very big misunderstanding, and I want people to understand that. Get good advice. I don't care how many assets you have. Always get your affairs in order, God forbid, just so you make sure things are the way they want it should be.
Okay, Bob, you've done a good job explaining the difference between wills and trusts, but, you know, I've got a will, and Brian Kilmeade still gets all my Beatle records when I go. So that's the name of that, too. All right, Bob, thanks for joining us today from Vegas.
All right, buddy.
All right.
Thanks, Steve.